handsaw is a cornerstone cutting tool in the arsenal of any self-respecting woodcrafts person. But its usefulness is certainly not confined to the walls of the workshop. When you're out tramping around in the wilderness, camping or backpacking or hiking, you need to be able to build shelters, or process firewood, or make clever gadgets that'll help your experience in the outdoors be much more enjoyable. Now, these are all tasks that a saw is perfect for. And that's why no self-respecting bushcraftsman person would be caught dead without one. Oh, look, what's that? Huh. What have we got here? Oh yeah, Baco 396. I'll be darned. This 21-inch blade was $10 on Amazon. Link in the description. The longer the blade, the larger your tree victims can be. The frame is going to be made out of some ash I've had laying around the shop for a while. I don't use ash all that often, but it has a beautiful grain and is fairly lightweight for its strength, so we'll give it a shot. As always, we cut down and square up the stock. The wood is slightly bowed, so it's going to have to be plain straight.
After eons of slumber, I, the legendary craftsman Foley Saw 12-inch planer molder, have been summoned once again to this mortal realm. One ill-fated wood specimen has been cursed with the extreme misfortune of
Oh, that's right, I still don't have 220-volt power in my workshop. We need to figure out the length of the cross brace and where on the saw it's going to go, taking into consideration the tenons that will nest into the handle mortises. This is all informed by the length of the blade and the location of its holes. When we have a good idea of the dimension of the saw, we cut down the handle stock to length, drill holes, and cut out the notches for the blade. So, what's the next thing we do?
I don't know. Mark lines.
We mark the mortise and tenons of the cross brace. The mortise and tenons will be the trickiest aspect of this build. No sense in spending too much time designing everything yet, in case we mess up. I want this thing to look bony and organic, so the ends of the tenons will be rounded as opposed to just cut straight. This will also help the joints be a little more forgiving when the whole saw is under tension. The cross brace is sawn down just to the tip of the roundover. The rest of the curves will be chiseled out by hand. The mortise is chiseled out to a depth that accounts for the roundover. There was quite a bit of checking back and forth before it fit properly. Now the curve is marked and removed from the handles. Stay inside your marked line. It's always better to remove too little than too much. Here we make a rounded sanding block to help clean up the rough edge. The radius needs to be a little smaller than the one used to make the actual curves. This in tandem with a rounded file will set this curve straight. Further adjustments may have to be made to the mortise and tenons once that's all done. When we get a successful test fit, we can finally start marking actual shapes. For the handles, all we have to do is draw out one design we like, cut it out, and then trace it onto the other. For the cross brace, we mark some vertices, draw some lines, cut some things out, and so on. It is now officially time to begin the next phase of our journey. We use a rasp and some files and many, many hours to coerce these ugly pieces of ash into something that will gather YouTube karma. It's easy to be stingy and be afraid to remove too much material at once, especially on the first go-around. That's why it's a good idea to get one handle like 90% of the way done before you even touch the other one. You'll know exactly how much work needs to be done before you achieve your desired look. As the pieces approach their ultimate form, they need to be treated more gentle. This means trading the heavy artillery for weak files and even low-grit sandpaper. We then transition into final sanding before we lather this thing up with tree-based oil. But before that happens, there's just one more crucial part to all this that we need to make. The tensioner is what allows the strings to, well, stay under tension. It's a simple piece, but crucial to the function of the saw. It gets hacked up and shaped and sanded just like everything else. I couldn't find my hemp braid, so I'm doing a test with some garbage yarn to make sure that everything fits together. And it does. Now, all tree-based components get lathered up with tree-based oil. Walnut oil, to be exact. It's safe to touch and has a fairly light complexion, perfect for all tree-based components. Now, for the second coat of walnut oil, what you want to do... Oh, god damn it. See, this is why I never use ash. Anyways, what I was going to say was that oil may reveal some unsightly qualities in the wood you didn't notice before. That's okay. Just go back and forgive those sins with some more filing and sanding before more oil is added. The wood should be sanded with 400 grit after the first coat anyways to knock down any raised grain. The next thing to do is to make something to put the saw in. This is, admittedly, my maiden voyage in leather dealings. There were oversights. Mistakes were made. New things were learned. I'll explain as best I can along the way as to what I would do differently next time around. Once we're sure the Eddie Bauer leather jacket from the thrift store is completely dismembered, we'll get a game plan together for the best way to use the material. Keep the back fully intact as this offers the largest surface area. The longest thing that needs to be contained within this pouch is the saw blade at 21 inches. Absolutely massive. The girth of all these saw parts must be accounted for as well. At this point, a decision must be made. To either make a tool roll or a pouch. The latter seems to make the most sense, as making a roll would mean having to live with this hideous seam that the good people at Eddie Bauer never anticipated seeing the light of day. With a rough idea of how this is all going to come together, we cut out the necessary shapes. I bought this terrible leather crafting kit on Amazon assuming I would need all these things and more, which of course turned out not to be the case. Link in the description. Regardless, some of these things are indeed necessary to join leather pieces together. Take, for example, the pizza cutter from hell. Useless. The holes it makes are too small to see. Such a shame. I really wanted the pizza cutter from hell and I to have a future together. Now it means nothing to me. The rake from hell does a much better job. But be warned, it requires a thorough beating in order to work properly. I'm using the smallest hammer I could find because I figured that was the kind of hammer you were supposed to use for these sort of things. But the harder you beat it, the better it works. The rake from hell will ruin your mat board, so use a piece of IKEA furniture instead. I really should have marked lines where these seams go. Let's just say they didn't all end up straight, if you know what I mean. Speaking of seams, the thread I used was way too thick. It kept binding and twisting up into impossible knots, and the stitching looks uneven in some spots. Clearly aware of its misuse, the thread transformed itself into an angry bird's nest out of spite. The alternative thread I stole from Emily's sewing kit seemed way too thin, so I just trudged on with what I had. Stitching takes a long time, but it's pretty simple. Just go in and out and then bring it on back the other way. Now, I'm not a betting man, but I'm willing to bet that this would have gone way smoother with thicker leather. Belt buckles are all the rage, so I'm using one of those to keep the flap shut. Alright, is it able to contain a saw? Then we're in business. There's just a few things out in the workshop we gotta take care of before we take this all for a test drive. The blade needs a sheath so it's not tearing everything up in the case when the saw is broken down. We cut a groove in some extra ash and add leather straps with button snaps to keep it all held in place. Ugh, try saying that 5 times fast. We cut a groove in some extra ash and add snaps. Okay, I'm not doing it. Tree-based components have wax added for extra protection and shine. You can use hemp braid or jute cord as a tensioner if you want to keep things natural, but either one will snap before you get maximum tension out of your blade. It'll still work just fine though. Unnatural alternatives include nylon paracord and fishing line. Alright, let's take it out back and see how she does. I love the style of saw because of its lightweight and its ability to break down into a compact, manageable size. Its aggressive teeth configuration makes short work of its tree victims. Take, for example, this baby catalpa tree in my backyard. It caught itself in the wrong place at the wrong time. Literally, though, it's growing between the cracks of pavement in the alley behind my house. It's only a matter of time before it gets too big, topples over, and snaps the power lines. Happens all the time.
Well, looks like we're all out of trees. Order has officially been restored in the alley. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.